May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Please be seated. Well, we've made it to the end of another year. Today is the last day of the church year, year B. And we celebrate the reign of Christ with some readings that are not terribly pleasant. But there's some really important bits in them, particularly in this gospel. That last sentence. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. I think this is the real key to the reign of Christ. It really points out what it means that Christ is king. Just as Christ did not belong to the world, and his kingdom is not of the world, we don't belong to the world. Or at least we shouldn't. We belong to the truth. And that's key, truth with a capital T, not fact. Not these little tidbits that we can line up. Yeah, this actually happened. That's fact. No. Truth. Truth is what's behind the stories we read in the Bible. Not the individual words and the supposed sequence of events. But it's the underlying message that they try to teach us. Just this past week, there was a group of pictures going around on Facebook that were all about Jesus and his family being refugees. And here, we follow this family of refugees, but reject refugees in his name. At least that's happening somewhat in Canada and a huge amount in the States. Now, it's likely that the fact is Jesus' family were never refugees. They were poor, yes. But the sequence of events that led to them fleeing probably never happened. But that's irrelevant. Because that's not what this story is about. It's about that truth. What is the truth behind saying that God among us was reduced to that lowest of places, of having to flee for his life? Depending on the kindness of strangers. And in that initial moment of his birth, being laid in a manger, not in a bed, not in a crib, but in a box holding hay for the animals to eat. What is the truth behind these stories? And how do we belong to that truth? We don't belong to the world. We don't belong to either socialism or capitalism or something in between. We belong to Christ. so we look for the truth in those stories and say, when we look at this and try to apply it to where we live, when we live, what does it mean? Not necessarily what do the words say, what were the facts, how did this play out? But what does it mean today? How does this situation, whether it happened or not, apply to what's going on now? And how do we join in that truth? How do we take that truth into us and live it out? That's what Christ the King is about. It's us responding to Jesus' message as told in the stories here. And as told here in our hearts. To respond with compassion, not judgment. To respond taking a risk that we too might die, that we too might have to flee, because instead of showing fear and hate, we show love to those who might hurt us. That's why when we look at this message, all of these questions of security are almost irrelevant. Because that's not what we're about. We are called to reach out to those who hate us. Jesus says that directly. Love your enemy. Reach out. That's how you defeat hate. Not by increasing fear. So, this is the perfect time for Christ the King, for this message. This message with it's hard times for Jesus. Because we're talking about him being condemned to death. And saying, that's okay. I love you. That is the answer to terror. Bombing their home doesn't change it. You can't kill an ideology with bombs. You can kill people with bombs, but you can't kill the ideology. All you do is reinforce it, because it says violence is the answer. And you make more. And we have wonderful evidence of this, because it's violence from the West that started the whole movement in the first place. And just keeps building it. The answer is love and education. The answer is removing poverty, not creating it. The answer is the truth found in here, which tells us over and over and over again, love your enemy. Do not return evil for evil. Take the stranger into your home and feed them. Look for God acting in the most unlikely of people. The Good Samaritan. someone who was not expected to take care of a Jew, where the Jews were required to and refused, so that they did not get defiled. That's the truth. That's Christ the King. And by living that truth, by belonging to the truth and not to the world, we can help God bring about the kingdom of heaven. Thanks be to God.